everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me as always are my fabulous co-hosts.
What up, Robbie PC?
I feel like I've been transported to the set of early 90s MTV over here.
Woo woo! Na 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 na. Hey, 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 good.
Oh, now I've left the baseball game.
And it's me, Diana. Hello.
Hi. Hey, everybody.
Excited to be here. Let's do this.
All right, let's do this. What are we doing? Well, this is our, what month is it? April 2024.
It could be.
Preview episode. So for new listeners or folks who just haven't listened in a little while or folks who just love hearing the same intro over and over, ABA Inside Track's a podcast about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research. Every week we pick a topic, talk about related research articles, and at the beginning of every month or at the end of every month, if you are on our Patreon premium feed, you're able to hear what's coming up in the rest of the month. So some updates from the show, knowing what you could read or plan to hear about, and then some other just fun stuff. It's a little more of a free-form show, and this month will be no different. So why don't we start with what the purpose of these previews is? It's one purpose. It is to talk about what episodes are coming out in this springy month of April. Diana, take us away.
Alrighty. So we have 3 episodes planned for you for April. The first of those features a recurring guest. So we have the return of Dr. Mallory Quinn, who was with us long, long ago, back in episode 43 or 42. I think it's 42, actually.
It's a long time ago. Over 200 guests
and
ago.
She's back to talk about some new research in the field of in the field of health, sports, and fitness. And this episode specifically is going to be about supervision in that arena, which is very exciting. It is a supervision episode outside of the month of supervision, September, which we normally do not allow. But because it was Mallory, we said, okay. We're very excited to welcome her. We are going to discuss at least 3 articles related to this topic, and they include Practice and Ethical Considerations for Behavior Analysts in Health, Sport, and Fitness by Holland and Sloviak. That was published in Behavior Analysis Research and Practice 2021. Also, pilot study of a manualized behavioral coaching program to improve dance performance by Quinn, Blair, Novotny, and Deshmukh. That was in Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis 2022. And Acceptability and Feasibility of Virtual Behavior Analysis Supervision by Simmons, Ford, Salvatore, and Moretti. That was in Behavior Analysis and Practice 2021. So that's pretty exciting stuff. We will also, just the 3 of us, have a convo about reinforcement thinning. We've touched on this before, but now we have a whole episode dedicated just to this topic, reinforcement thinning as it relates to functional communication training. And we'll talk about several things with respect to that. Those articles include a component analysis of schedule thinning during functional communication training, like I just said, by Betts, Fisher, Rohn, Mintz, and Owen. That was in JABA 2013. Updated recommendations for reinforcement schedule thinning following functional communication training by Kranick and Brown. Behavior Analysis and Practice 2023. Functional communication training during reinforcement schedule thinning, an analysis of 25 applications by Greer, Fisher, Siney, Owen, and Jones. And that was in JABA 2016. And finally, reinforcement schedule thinning following treatment with functional communication training by Hanley, Iwata, and Thompson. That was in JABA all the way back in 2001.
Oh, I appreciate that we're getting this episode out before swimsuit season, so everyone can really work on their schedule thinning, and hit the beach feeling good about themselves.
I don't think you paid attention when we recorded that episode. That's not that's
I would have to listen back to the tape. You know what? You should have fun at the beach no matter what. But if
that's right, all bodies are beach bodies, Rob.
But if we're just talking about maintaining good health, I think it's always good to be thinking about your schedule thinning. Good health overall.
Yeah, excellent health.
Yeah.
Okay. No. You'll have to tune in, listeners, to find out if Rob is on target with his analysis of that episode.
I mean, I wore my swimsuit the whole episode, and nobody said anything to me.
He sure did.
It was really awkward because when we did the episode, it was winter. and the heat wasn't on in the house, and so he was just hanging out in his swim trunks without a swim shirt on. It was.
I put a lot into this show. I really want the spiritual.
I think it probably came through
behind the scene. I hope it does. You should hear it.
It does.
How cold my voice was.
All right. And then one more episode for the month of April. And this is on a brand new topic that we have really not forayed into virtually at all in this show.
Virtually.
Either virtually or in actual.
Or metaphorically.
Or physically. Real life.
In any way. Legitimately. Yeah. And that's ABA and public policy. This was a Jackie recommendation. Thank you, listener Jackie.
You're welcome.
And we
to delete it, but she just kept re-uploading the file, so there's nothing we could do.
We're doing this, everyone.
So we will be treated to a conversation around several articles on this particular topic, and those include Why Public Policy Matters, a call to action for the everyday behavior analyst by Coop, Ice, Tomei, and Urbano Powell. That was in Behavior Analysis and Practice 2023. Why we all need to shape the profession of behavior analysis through advocacy and how to get started by Ivanko, Moss-Lourenco, Kramer, and Napolitano. That was also in Behavior Analysis and Practice. It was also 2023. An analysis of voting and legislative behavior by Cyback. That was, guess it, Behavior Analysis and Practice, guess when, 2023. And finally, the Public Policy Advocacy Actions Checklist. Success Stories from 3 States by Thompson, Bolokas, Johnson, and Williams. That was published in Behavior Analysis and Practice. I can't quite remember the year, but maybe it was 2023.
And that one's more like a gravy article, because I think when we were starting to prep it, you're seeing a lot of the same content. So, but that one has a good checklist, as in the title. So
show does. Okay, and that's what we're going to do for April, with the exception that if you are a patron, you will also, on top of all that other content, you're also going to get a book club. Is that right?
You will.
Okay. Just making
sure. We
haven't
recorded it yet, so it's anybody's guess.
It's a currently theoretical book club, but by the time we get to that date of release, it should be a real live book club.
Would you say what the book club will be?
I might.
It's right in front of you.
Yeah. So you voted and we listened. The book club for this semester, or season, I guess, will be on activity schedules for children with autism, teaching independent behavior. And that was written by McClanahan and Krantz, pretty much the bigwigs of activity schedules. And there are so many good tidbits in here, you're not going to believe it.
Yes. And technically, we would be doing the most recent version, which is the 2nd edition. However, we'll probably also talk about the 1st edition, because that's the version I bought. Weirdly enough, that was the one you could easily get on Amazon, and I didn't see the 2nd edition until I searched it again.
That is kind of strange, yeah.
It was very weird.
And I have it right here. I don't know if people can see it.
Hold it up to the mic closer.
This is an audio recording, but here it is. There you go. That's the sound of the book, and that's how long it is. It's a good quick read. You want to read along and get prepped for the book club.
Well, that probably brings up something else that we can tease a little bit now. We'll talk more about it in May, but we do love our book clubs, and I think your idea, Diana, to make this month more about practice, meaning reading a book that you could get into practice faster, sort of left us with some other books that we really were excited to read. We also have some special guests coming up who have a book on a topic that we're very excited to talk about. So just a quick preview. This summer, guess what? We usually do a summer book club and a spring book club and then a seasonal one. This is going to be the summer of book clubs, folks, especially if you are on the Patreon feed, if you're on the free feed even, because you'll be getting our last year's summer book club. It's going to be books by the barrel full and long discussions about said books. So please do look forward to that as we look forward to preparing all of those.
So if you love book clubs, and this is the summer of book clubs, then by the transitive property, this is the summer of love.
I suppose that makes sense.
Yeah. So get ready.
Get ready.
Wear your swimsuit.
Yeah, but we'll be announcing some of those in another preview. That's still a little bit of a ways away. But if you were thinking, I want to make sure I get every single book club, this might be a good time to check out the Patreon page. You know, you're going to be getting them on the free feed too. No worries. And we also have, speaking of the Patreon page, we have a listener episode coming out in May. But you're going to want to know what's going on, because it is a listener episode, meaning that our patrons get to vote on the topic that we discuss. So we want to make sure everyone hears about this. Now, we've been getting a lot of folks on Patreon who are subscribing. We say, thank you so much. You get episodes a week ahead of time. You get discounts on CEs. You get a lot of free CEs, like for listening to the listener episode. You get a code for that. For our book clubs, you get access to all the book clubs that haven't been released on the free feed yet. But we've also noticed there are a lot of people who are able to join now. I don't know if this is new, but they can just join and listen to the show on the Patreon feed for no cost. And the podcast is always free. It's just some of these extras that, we kind of put behind the little Patreon help us out with with a little donation wall. But I'm thinking what we might want to do for some of these, since we do have so many people who are finding us there, I think we might be opening up some of our polls. So I think we're going to try out our listener poll for this spring. We're going to open that up to anyone who is following us on Patreon. I think we can do that. I'm not 100% sure, but if you have never been able to do this, if you're hearing this on the free feed, but you also listen through the Patreon app or through the Patreon RSS feed, I don't know what you get there, well then this is going to be a chance for you to try out voting, and maybe you'll decide you want to join one of the other tiers. So here are the topics.
Especially after you listen to our public policy episode, you're going to want to try out voting.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You want to, call to action. You got to practice voting and making your voice heard. So we're going to try that out this spring and see how that goes, because we do want to make sure a lot of people, we have a lot of great patrons. We want to make sure their voices get heard, but we also want to, see if other people have other thoughts too and add to that, because there's still a lot of good bonuses, I think, for subscribing there. So our options for listener episodes. So this will come out in May, but patrons will get this early and with a free CE in April, the end of the month. And our choices are going to be an update on differential reinforcement in skill acquisition, consultation in behavior analysis. This is relatively general consultation, so sort of looking at best practices in talking with others about behavior analysis and using the science of behavior analysis in fields like certainly, autism, medical, education, and an update to school attendance problems research, which honestly, some of that update will be some older articles that are much more directly behavior analytic that I found last summer when prepping for a talk we did at the Thompson Center. So we're going to have kind of a mix of some recent updates to school attendance problems, as well as we're going to have some classics that we'll put in there. They're a little more straightforward, sort of, that looks like a behavior analysis article from the 90s, which is where they're from, or the early 2000s as well. So those are our 3 topics. So you'll be able to go vote on that on our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/ABA Inside Track is where that poll lives. And we'll post on socials and stuff. But I know sometimes if you put links, they make your post not appear to everybody because those systems are a bit broken.
Algorithm.
Yeah. So just letting you know that now. All right. So those will be our episodes and our planning for future episodes coming up this month. All right, let's move into the errata section of the show. So this is the part of the show where we talk about other things related to the show, other things related to behavior analysis as a field, and then maybe read some emails or some comments from listeners.
We actually have an errata.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Should we start with an actual errata?
An actual errata.
Okay, let's start with that.
So, listener Terry wrote in, or comment, on Squarespace. Mm-hmm. Commented on Squarespace.
That's the website. That's our website.
On the website.
Commented on the
Old
website.
School, commenting on a website.
Nice. Thank you, listener Terry. And she was commenting on episode 254, Improving Your Parent Training Practices. And so she writes, or they write, I don't know. I just assumed, and I'm so sorry, Terry, Yes. So they write, you mentioned in this podcast about the title of the article, The Problem of Parental Non-Adherence in Clinical Behavior Analysis. They just wanted to point out that based on our points of the content of the article, we assume that the problem was with the parent not adhering, but the title could have been derived from the practitioner's lack of accounting for the listed reasons why it's challenging for parents to implement the strategies to the highest fidelity. So the problem is on the practitioner's part, and that point makes the title accurate and appropriate. So I was like, yeah. Mm-hmm. So we might have read it in a different way than the authors wanted us to. And so thank you for pointing that out, Terry. Mm-hmm. Appreciated it.
Yeah. And I think it's a good point. I would just professionally would rather assume that it's better to blame us as practitioners and not put any blame on parents for treatment non-adherence even though there are ways that the title still would work in a way that doesn't do that. But I think it is so easy for any individual to lay blame on other people. What is it? Pat Fryman has the circumstances view, or the idea that
there's no such thing as a bad boy.
Yeah, and then there's another. It's kind of a related sort of phenomenon that I don't think is his, where it's most people would say when there's a problem and it's something they did. Well, what could you do? Environmental factors. But when someone else has a problem, well, it's because of them and their badness or their inability to follow rule. It's easy for us to assume the worst of others and then not take blame for our own mistakes. And I think it's important that we all spend less time on who's to blame.
It's the attribution effect.
Attribution effect. That sounds right. I just read it the other day, but I cannot remember this where exactly. But I think it's important for us always to be thinking about environmental variables for everyone. And if we're going to blame anyone, well, you can blame yourself if you'd like. It may not be fair to you either, but if that's where you want to start, that might be okay. But always be thinking about the environment.
That's what I always tell the students. If the clients are not progressing, first look to see what you're doing before you'd be like, well, it's the client's fault.
Yeah. You certainly could, going back to some of our ACT reading, you could say, I'm having the thought that the client is all at fault and I'm really, really good. And that is a fair thought to have because we do that. And then what is your action? Is your action, I love blaming other people for problems. If that's really your value, you're not going to get very far as a clinician or as a person people enjoy talking to for any length of time. So probably not a good idea. All right, so that was an errata. Wow, a real errata.
Yeah, and then we had another listener write in that they were Patreon. They were a Patreon member, and they started getting a lot of notifications on our older episodes popping up in their news feed. And that is because we are adding all of the older episodes to Patreon.
Yes.
So that might be something that you want to explain to people, because I've gotten many emails and texts being like, what's happening? It's
a good reminder, Jay, because I made a post of it months and months and months ago, and then I set all these things to happen automatically and then kind of forgot about them. It's good to come back to things, because just because I wrote it once on the internet doesn't mean everyone saw it and therefore is understanding of it. Yes, we realized
algorithm strikes again.
Somebody had asked, like, oh, do you have episode blank? And, I'm a Patreon member and I wanted to just download it through, I forget which app it was. And I realized that everything prior to when we started on Patreon, so about episode 140, you had to get in a different RSS feed, which, it's not super hard, but as somebody who understands the ideal of, wouldn't it be great to have all the things in one place? I definitely heard from, a couple of listeners who then had to go to a different place to find some of those episodes. So they're not
right. Because
expensive
that's confusing
or costly.
if you got to go back and forth. Yeah.
So I decided the only way I could find to put those on Patreon were to re-upload them there. And rather than uploading 140 episodes all at once, which would A, take a lot of time to do, and B, really clog up your feed, we just decided, let's just do 10 a month until we're all caught up. So every month at the beginning of the month, and, people, if you hate this, we can always change it to, one a week or something until we're caught up. There's a lot of ways to do this. It just has to be like a re-released episode. I can't find any other way to do it. Every month, we drop the next 10 episodes, the next 10. So if you are a newer listener, we drop them in there.
So if you're
a newer listener and you haven't heard some of those older episodes, some of them we've done follow-ups, so you may not need them, but some of them we haven't done any follow-ups in a long time, or the information is still real good. So feel free. I think everything past episode 26, I think that's where we really hit our stride as podcasters. So when you get past there, I think it's just gold nonstop. So please, we don't remember, but we're assuming our older memories are letting us say they're old. They were great. So feel free to take a look at those. So you'll have 10 every month until we're all caught up, and then after that, you can just get them all in one place, no matter where you are. You can get them on Apple Podcasts or wherever too. But this way, you can get them wherever is easiest for you. Thank you, Jackie, for reminding that. Diana, I know we had some sad news last month that we were not able to talk about on the preview, just in terms of timing, but I think this is a good place to do an update.
Oh, sure. Yes. It was probably after the recording of our last episode, but we heard the very sad news that Dr. Liz Hughes Fong passed away suddenly. And that, I think, really has hit our whole community hard, because she was a young researcher still and so active in really, really important areas. So her paper on doing a self-analysis on your own cultural competence and then how to apply that to your practice was really transformational in our field and served as a catalyst, I think, for much of the cultural responsiveness work that has been done since then. And we all owe a big debt to her for that work. So it's really, really sad. We reviewed that work at one point, and then we also had her on to talk with us about culturally competent assessment as well. So if anyone is looking to hear more about that work specifically, they can tune into episode 71, in which we reviewed her initial paper and with Dr. Salandi Forte, and then episode 104, in which we had Dr. Hughes Fong on to talk about assessment practices. If you have the opportunity to listen to those during the month of March, anyone who ordered those episodes, we donated and then also matched that money towards the fund that has been set up for her daughter. And if you're hearing this now, you may have missed that particular time, but you can absolutely go and check out the links that are up there for donation.
So there's definitely some sad news. I think it is always as tough as our field, as young as our field as a whole is. That there are still life realities that can come into it.
Yeah. But many people all around have been commenting on the varying places to comment about the difference that both Liz personally made for them, like they were colleagues of hers, she was their professor, right? Or just the impact that her work has had on them and on all of the subsequent research that's now been available to us due to some of her early work. So her legacy absolutely lives on. Thank you for everyone who's shared those memories and reflections on the various locations that are out there. And this is something that our community has come together on, and it certainly is a sad thing. But thank you for everyone who I know has reached out and who has donated towards her daughter's fund.
Yeah, I think looking at Liz's research on at the time cultural competence being the term, and now moving into cultural humility, I think it is one of the lines of research that I would say has really changed my perception of the world in a way that I wasn't sure if I was getting to that part of life where it's like, and this is how life will be for the rest of my, things don't change. This old dog's not learning new tricks. And it really was an area that, as a member of majority communities, my entire life, I've had the ability to ignore or to blame on other factors and to not really be a part of any of those discussions. And when they felt uncomfortable, I could leave. I had that ability. And reading,
which is part of your privilege, is what you're saying.
Privilege is the word I was definitely looking for. Yes. And reading that work, and then subsequent work that we've done, part of the podcast, for our own professional developments, our own personal developments, just shifted how I've seen the world in a way that was very scary at first. And now I can't imagine not paying attention to that for so much of my life, and just, being so much more aware of how easy it was for me to avoid those conversations in a way that was not equitable in every sense of the word. And I've really, hopefully, been making up for that. And I'm always accepting of feedback from when we have guests on the topic. I love hearing, anything they have, their additions to what we know as behavior analysts, as humans. And certainly listeners, we've had a lot of great listeners write in over the years with comments and feedback for us about how we talk about some of these issues around cultural humility. And it's been really, I guess, again, another privilege that I've gotten to say it's exciting, as opposed to a lot of people who are like, it's been a relief that someone finally seems to be listening for the first time. So again, another privilege I get is it gets to be exciting part of research. But I was really moved by Liz's work, and we had the chance to have her on the show. And we also got to meet Liz at one of the Thompson Center conferences, which was, I think, one of the first times we met someone who'd been on the show at a time when I finally felt comfortable talking to people we had on the show as colleagues, rather than just like, oh my God, you came on our little podcast. How nice. So that was a really, special moment in a lot of ways. So thank you to Liz and everyone who has been, donating to the page for her daughter. But anyway, that's
Thanks, Rob.
my addendum. All right. I think that covered all of our topics. Dag, would you have any other? I think we had everything. I think because our errata was our
good.
email for the
Yep.
week, right?
The errata was actually errata.
The errata was an errata. All right. Well, if you want to send in some errata, please do so. You can do that on any of the social media outlets, on our Patreon page. Again, patreon.com/ABA Inside Track, or just email us directly at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the preview. We got to go because we need to wrap up recording some of those episodes so they come out on time. We'll be back next week with the first of those fun-filled episodes. But until then, keep responding. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.